This is how I successfully got into the NP program in Ontario. Just keep in mind that I applied to 4 different universities and I got accepted into one. So the committee boards that review your application are very different and their standards are different depending on who's reading your application. The primary healthcare nurse practitioner program, which is the program I'm in, includes 8 universities across Ontario. You basically share the same website, so all the 8 universities share one main website where there's some core courses of the NP program. It includes patho or pathophysiology, advanced healthcare assessment, therapeutics, and I think there's one other course. I'm gonna do a separate video on just reviewing the courses of my first year. In general, these 8 universities require you to have your bachelor's in nursing with a minimum of 70%. Now keep in mind, this is the bare minimum, with also 3,640 hours of nursing work, which is equivalent to 2 full years of work. They also want you to have recommendation letters. Now this is where it varies from university to university. Some want you to have 2, others want you to have 3. So I recommend going on the website and looking at exactly what they want. Now if you graduated, let's say 5 years or even 10 years, some universities exempt you from having academic letters because maybe your professors have retired or they've moved on and you can't get in touch with them. So they recognize that it's very difficult if you've been out of school for a long period of time. That being said, my own personal experience, I applied to the program when I was 6 years out of my bachelor's. So it was very hard for me to find my academic references. So what I did is that I applied to be a diabetes educator and I went through a certification program at Michener where they had diabetes educators teaching the class. These educators are master prepared nurses. So I asked my, my professor or my teacher at the time of that program to write me a recommendation letter. If you are currently a nursing student, I really recommend you getting in touch or getting close to a couple of your professors, maybe even 3, because you never know, some of them might retire, some of them might be willing to give you a reference, but then when it comes time to it, in 3 years or whatever years from now, they might not respond to your emails. So at least 3, I would say. That's something I personally didn't do. I wasn't thinking that far ahead, but if I were to do it again, I would get at least 3 contacts. The other recommendation letter comes from your clinical manager, so the place where you're currently working at. And to me, that's easier to get because you see your manager all the time. Well, at least I hope you do. So staying on topic with your clinical experience, you need to prove that you have worked those hours. So on the website, when you're applying to the universities, there are forms that you can print out and you give those forms to HR of where you're currently working. Now this gets tricky if you've worked in multiple organizations like I did. I started in one organization here in Toronto, then I went to the Middle East and I came back. So it was very hard for me to send 4 different applications to 3 different organizations, kind of keeping track of all of that at the same time. So it's not hard, but it's a very lengthy process. Other than getting the recommendation letters, which was tricky for me, the other tricky part or the hardest part of the application, at least in my opinion, is the personal essay. Now, each university requires you to answer at least 3 questions, and these 3 questions are listed on the university website of whichever program you want to apply to. But in general, the questions are very similar, and although a lot of students recycle or use the same answers for each university, it's nice to kind of tailor your answers to that specific university, because Keep in mind that these people that are reading your application have been working there for years. This is their job, this is what they do. So they recognize when you are kind of writing a general statement, and they really want the student to be interested in that school. So it's nice to highlight specific things relating to that school. At least that's what I try to do. The first general question that they want you to answer is, why do you want to be a nurse practitioner in the primary health care program rather than any other NP specialty? Now this question is trying to figure out, why are you applying to the primary health care program? In Ontario, there are 8 primary health care programs. The only exception is University of Toronto, where they offer adult and pediatric NP specialties. So that's the only university that offers that. The rest of them is primary health care. To answer this question, you kind of have to know what primary health care is. A lot of nursing students, when they graduate, they go to hospitals, inpatient hospitals, Emerge, ICU, and that isn't primary health care. So in this question, I think they want you to distinguish, why are you transitioning from acute care to primary health care? At least that's the way I interpret it. The other general question is, what personal and professional attributes do you bring to the program? So here, you're basically selling yourself. They want to know, why should I admit you to our university? What do you bring? What's so unique about you? What are your experiences? So here is where you talk about what you learned being a nurse, what you've done, what you've accomplished, what you hope to accomplish, all these questions into one answer. At least that's how I answered my question. The next question is related to time management. Given that the program is very demanding, they want to know, do you have a plan going into the program? Do you plan on working? Is it part-time? Is it full-time? Depending on the course stream that you're taking, you can either be in the NP program full-time or part-time. So it all depends on what you're applying to. The other requirements that you'll need are, of course, your transcripts from your bachelor's and proof that you are registered with the CNO, or the College of Nurses of Ontario. And that's really easy to get because you renew it every year and you can just get it from the website. So you can apply to be in the NP program either full-time or part-time. Full-time takes 2 years to complete and part-time takes 3 years. I am currently in the full-time program. I am working casually because, as I mentioned before, I've been a nurse for 6 years before I applied to the program. And in my last 2 years of working, I basically worked a lot to save up because I knew I didn't want to be working full-time or even part-time. So I kind of planned ahead, but I know everyone is different. Some people that I know are in the part-time program because they need to work, either because they have a family, they have a mortgage to pay, you know, bills don't stop for anyone. So everyone is different. My tip or my recommendation to you is to start planning ahead. It is a very demanding program. A lot of people underestimate the time that it'll take from their lives. I know a couple students that have dropped out for different reasons, either because they found the courses really heavy, they needed to focus on work, it just wasn't vibing with their schedule, many different reasons. So that was my journey to apply into the NP program. As I mentioned earlier, everyone's journey is different. Everyone's paths take them differently. My recommendation is to start early. You can browse on the university's website. Everything is there. You can have a sense of what they're looking for. Get in touch with your professors. Keep in touch with them. I would recommend sending them an email maybe every year. How are they doing? Even going to the school if you live within the city, going to see how they're doing. It really helps. I would have done that. But yeah, just plan ahead. Some people apply when they're 3 years after graduation. I applied when I was 6 years out of school. I know another student that has done her master's. She's in her 50s, so she applied and she's about to finish her NP. So I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments and I will answer it as best I can. So I'll see you in the next video.